A new year is starting. This is a special time, as on the 26th of July, on Saturday, we are going into a new year energy in the Dreamspell calendar, the Mayan calendar that I use. And so we are starting anew. We are starting with Yellow Seed 7. Which is bringing a whole new energy and ending the year of the storm, ending the year of chaos, transformation, and renewal in relationship to the outside world. Well, we certainly had some stormy things in the outside world. So I'm going to make another podcast episode about the New Year energy somewhere in the weekend. But for now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the past year energy. Close off this Storm 6 year with talking a little bit about the outside world. Because I feel strongly the need to do so. As I was trying to record this episode, I just kept feeling I have to talk about some worldly things, about some perhaps political things. And this wave gives us plenty of reason to. We start with Mirror 1, which is about reflecting, which is about seeing the perspective of others. It's about confrontation. And this wave, one of the major themes of this wave is meeting that confrontation with something other than yourself, with people who are different from you, and coming then to the goal of dog, of being tolerant, of being accepting, of standing in your love and forgiveness mode, of being willing to be understanding and friendly with those who are different. We're in a white wave, and this can bring a bit more of a black and white perspective, a bit more of a dualistic one or the other kind of perspective. We try to differentiate, and we might feel the tendency to look at good and bad, to identify where we stand, to look at where do I stand in certain things. And this could lead to picking sides. Luckily, we are invited by the yellow star to go a little bit more into the nuance, to look at the details and to see that there are more options than two. The yellow color embraces more than just the two as the white does. And the yellow star shows us that there are so many different stars out there, so many different positions we can take. We don't have to be on one side or the other side. We can shine bright like a star in our own unique spot. The star also represents astrological signs, the characters of which there are 12 in Greek astrology or 20 in Mayan astrology, showing that there are many different ways, many different energies, many different archetypes. And so too, there are so many different humans, so many different people. Now what this star also teaches us, what this wave also shows us, is that we have our own unique upbringing. We have our own little neighborhood that we grew up in. We have our own social groups that we grew up in. Our parents raised us a certain way. Our friends groups shaped us. And so, one thing that can be great to do during these weeks is to identify your social identities, the social groups that you belong to, or that you have in the past identified with or been a part of. And we are in the middle of the calendar. It's a great time to evaluate, where do I stand, and where, are these social groups still right for me? Are these identities still right for me? These are all kinds of things that we can look at. And I wanted to talk about this perspective of nuance first before I get into some of the other things. It is within all of these contexts that we can better understand the outside world, that we can better understand differences and friction and conflict, that we can better understand other people that are different from us. And that's how we come to that great love, that great tolerance and acceptance. That is how we can see that understanding for people who are so very different, or who do things that we think are terrible. I don't know about you, but over the past year, there have been things happening in the world and people doing things that I thought were quite weird. I thought were quite problematic at times. And I've learned a lot about understanding these other perspectives, these other ways of doing things. And seeing how other people's different positions lead them to different experiences and different perspectives. Over the past year, since July 2024, we have seen a lot happen. We have seen the US elections. We have seen Trump getting into office and all the shakeup that caused. We have seen the war in the Middle East continue as well as escalate. And there's been a lot of conversation, debate, conflict, protest around the world because of the many different opinions and viewpoints and anger and sadness and the feeling of we need to do something, we need to intervene, we need to stop intervening and whatever, so many ideas and feelings about what needs to be done in the Middle East from all those people who don't live there. But of course, in many cases, their governments do get involved into what's happening there. And of course, whether you live there or not, I think almost all of us get to hear something from what's happening over there, and we have feelings about that. We care about our fellow human beings, and we're seeing suffering there. And I notice, which is probably true for a lot of us, I find it very difficult to talk about it, especially when other people can hear me. It's a tricky thing. There's a lot of nuance, a lot of feelings, a lot of anger and opinions. And I feel simultaneously the need to talk about it and the desire to just leave it be and not think about it too much. But I think there's a great many lessons for us all to learn from what's happening over there. And, these things wouldn't be happening if there weren't lessons for humanity to learn. We wouldn't all around the world be so concerned with what's happening over there. And we wouldn't have such great suffering happening over there if there weren't important lessons to be learned. That is how I believe life works. Suffering only happens as a teacher, only happens so that we can learn because there's something that needs to be learned. And one thing that is becoming so blatantly obvious is that an old trauma is being repeated, is being passed on. A common concept known in personal psychology is trauma repetition and the passing on of a trauma, where someone who has had a terrible experience, who has had a traumatic experience, will pass this on to another, will do to someone else what has been done to them. And the situation in Israel is becoming the biggest and most obvious example of just that concept of passing on the trauma to someone else. Another phenomenon we can notice there is that a traumatized person can have a story around that trauma of they are the victim. And when we see ourselves as the victim, if that is a very strong influence, we can feel that we are always going to be the victim. Or we can have a hard time seeing that we also have the potential to be the perpetrator in someone else's story. If we identify strongly as the victim, not only do we attract more situations into our lives where we are the victim, we keep ourselves down and let ourselves be moved around instead of taking action as a creator of our lives. We instead, with a victimhood mentality, can get caught up again and again in victimhood situations because we don't take charge of our own lives, if we don't take responsibility of our own actions and how our own actions lead to the life experience that we have. If we feel powerless, which is what victimhood mentality certainly leads to, then we feel that our own actions do indeed not have an influence on our own lives. That we are just being thrown around by other people and circumstances, by life. Now, in this victimhood mentality, we may not be able to see our own behaviors very well. And so that is what this wave shows us, is to look in the mirror. The theme of this wave, to reflect and to see the other, but to also see ourselves. That helps you to see that you are not always the victim. That there are many situations in which your actions shaped your life, and in which your actions influenced other people's experience. Now, we often don't know whether that was good or bad, whether the other person experienced it as good or bad, nor what the consequences of it are in the short term and in the long term. We often don't know. But when we can see that our own thoughts and feelings and actions and beliefs shape our lives and influence also the lives of others, then we can see that we can have many different roles, that we can be on many different sides of a story, of an experience. When we can look at situations as everybody has a role in the story, this helps us to generalize and to understand that it's not about the identity or the person. It's not about whether you are a Jew or whether you are a socialist, whether you are a woman or a man, and so many other identities or stories that humans have made about what we are or are not. But they don't define you, and they don't always influence the situation in the same way. And so we can be in many different roles, and sometimes suddenly the roles are reversed. Suddenly we find that a certain identity makes you the victim in one situation. It might make you the dominant one, part of the dominant social group in the other situation. And so we have to look at the situation and the role that you play within it every time, instead of assume that you always play the same role, or that the same social group always plays the same role. Now, this requires regular reflection. And this can be uncomfortable sometimes. But it is through being willing to see, willing to look, that we can come to greater understanding of ourselves and understanding of others. And this is why it is so important that we get these reflections, that we get these other perspectives, that we have these interactions with people different from ourselves, because this is how we learn. That is the beauty of human life, human society, and all the craziness and chaos that it sometimes brings. But because of our differences, we get to learn. Because of our differences, we get to have an experience. Because of our differences, we get to feel that friction, which is also the friction of a spark of love when two people meet and they see something that is the same, but also something that is different, and it feels good. And so sometimes it feels good, and sometimes it doesn't feel so good, but we often don't know what the long-term consequences are. And sometimes what initially doesn't feel good teaches us so great a lesson that helps us move forward in life later. And sometimes what initially feels so good later turns out terrible. And so this is also the beauty of life. We don't always know what's going to happen. We don't always know what we're looking at. Life is full of unexpected things, full of change. And we move between stability and change. And that's a good thing. And as we make those movements, we walk the road of life. And this is why they say it's about the journey, not the goal. Because that journey is this experience in which we learn, in which we love, in which we fight, in which we experience friction and harmony and all the other wonderful feelings that are part of the human experience. We get to live all of that. We get to experience all of that. And this wave describes the beauty of that process, of how our differences are our teachers, of how we can come to great love and understanding by reflecting, by being willing to see. And this is how we grow. I just described 7 different mind characters in 30 seconds there. That is the process of this wave. The yellow sun today is about seeing what is there. The learning point is the star which resembles those differences. The goal is the white dog, that love, that care, that understanding. The theme is reflection. And this whole process is about personal growth, the seed at tone 7. So, we're going to talk more about tone 7, about the yellow seed, because that is the energy of the 26th of July. But we're going to do that in the next podcast episode. So, I hope you have a wonderful week, a wonderful day, and a wonderful experience with the great adventure of life. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.